What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Around the Clock. Today, I'm going to fill you in as to where we are from the last video. You may want to grab a drink because there's a lot to catch you up on. So, if you saw the last video, where we left off is I had a 2007 Speed Yellow 997 911 C4S, and I had just taken a deposit on the car, and I was pretty much on my way to start preparing it for the new owner. So that is kind of where things left off, and I kind of wanted to just give you guys an update as to what has kind of transpired since then. So to give you a little background as to what went on, I actually was offered two vehicles for my 997 C4S. And it initially started with a 1997 Subaru WRX Type R STI. Now, to start, I will tell you guys, I'm not really a huge Subaru guy, but in the past, I did have a early 2000s GC8 chassis Subaru 2.5 RS, which is a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. It was a sedan, and it was automatic. It was actually my daily that I was using. At the time, I was working at a company that was, 2 hours away, and I wanted something unique and cool, but still decent on fuel. So I was okay with the automatic. There's a lot of traffic and things like that, and I was pretty happy with the car, and I ended up selling it for something else later on down the road. So what caught my attention about this specific car is, one, the color. The color is called Sonic Blue. So back in high school, I used to have an S95 Mustang. It was just a V6 convertible. Ended up getting it for my brother, but it was repainted Sonic Blue, and I absolutely love that color. Blue is actually my favorite color in general, but Sonic Blue is just personally one of my favorites. But that is what appealed to me. And then also, as I mentioned in the beginning of every video, I like unique and uncommon cars, uncommon platforms, right? So the WRX, the STI is not necessarily a uncommon platform. However, this specific car was a two-door. So as you know, most Subarus, both the WRX and STIs, are sedans, but this was a coupe. So it was a, as I mentioned, 97 WRX Type R STI, which was definitely limited production numbers of those cars, especially in, I believe they called it either Sonic Blue or Rally Blue. But what really made it stand out to me that I liked about it is a couple things. So one, I like the uncommon spec. Two, it actually had a period correct body kit on it. So for me, growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, right, Fast and Furious era where, car customization was just coming out, it had a period correct, authentic JDM C-West body kit on it. And the body kit is a replacement front bumper, side skirts, I think there were rear spats, and then the wing that was on that car was also different. But together, it looked really good. It had some period correct Advan wheels. I believe they were either RG1s or RG2s. I'm not super familiar with them, but they were gold with like kind of the blue sticker around the inner barrel. And the thing that appealed to me as well is that the car didn't have full bolts. It wasn't like a heavily modded car, because normally what happens is when you do that, you start to affect the kind of the rigidity. The more you do to them, the less kind of dependable, I guess you could say they are, unless you fully start building them. This car literally had an Apexi intake and a Blitz Nurspec exhaust, and it sounded amazing. It had that very distinctive Subaru sound, and it was on coilovers, and just like a very clean car. It had a Cusco roll bar in it, but still had full interior. Now, I will say there were some details that maybe didn't look as clean because they actually had to cut part of the dash in order to fit the cage in there, but still have the dash intact. So otherwise though, aside from that and some other things, it was a pretty cool, unique car. The person who offered me this was in Arizona, and it was all sight unseen, mainly through text messages. And initially when he offered me the car plus cash. But we just couldn't agree on the cash portion, especially because we had shipped the cars to each other. And with the cash that he was offering, I wasn't willing to cover the logistics costs just because I didn't feel like the values were quite there. So he ended up, initially when he offered me that in the cash, we just couldn't agree on the cash price, and we kind of left things as it was and just said, I don't think it's going to work out. We just kind of went our separate ways. Now, he did text me a couple hours later and said that his wife had recommended that maybe he sells his SUV that he doesn't really use. And just out of curiosity, I asked, what kind of SUV is it? And he said it's a 2016 Porsche Cayenne Turbo S. Now, at first, I had reservations, and the reason why is because we have an SUV already, and I just did not see how having two SUVs was necessary, because we do have a couple other vehicles that are sedans, so we don't necessarily need another vehicle that can seat four, and then also, just having another SUV, I don't know how practical that really is. But with that being said, the vehicle, the SUV that we currently have is a L405 chassis Range Rover HSE, and the reason why we went with that vehicle is because it's not really super fast. Ours is the V6 supercharged, so it gets pretty decent fuel mileage, but those things are just very comfortable and very luxurious, versus the Cayenne is more of a sportier SUV. But prior to getting that L405 Range Rover, we've had Cayennes in the past. We've had a 955 Turbo, several 957Ss, we had a 958.1 Cayenne Turbo. And actually, prior to getting into the L405, I tried to tell my wife that, we should get a 958.2 Cayenne GTS, just because cosmetically speaking, I think that the GTS models look really good. But again, we thought about what is the purpose of an SUV, right? It's, comfort. We're at a point in our lives where, the family vehicle, comfort and luxury kind of takes priority over having like a sporty SUV. That's why you kind of have your fun cars. So that is why we went the Range Rover route, and we've been very happy with it. We've had it for over 2 years. Normally we switch up cars maybe once a year for the wife, but we've had it for well over 2 years. We've been extremely happy with it. We've taken on many road trips, and it's been a great vehicle for us. So that is kind of why, for us, I did have reservations. But it did interest me because prior to getting into it, we were looking at 958.2s. And for those who aren't familiar with the Turbo S model, it's pretty much the highest trim level you can get for a Porsche Cayenne. I want to say the MSRP was maybe around 140, 160. I'm not 100% sure, but I know it had a pretty high MSRP. And when he sent me the build list, the first thought was, wow, it doesn't have many options. But with it being such a high trim level from the factory, everything comes standard. For example, it had PCCBs, or Porsche carbon ceramic brakes. This specific car also had some upgrades. It had an IPD plenum, Fab Speed exhaust, really nice dark brown interior, and just a very well sorted SUV. And the biggest thing about those vehicles, all vehicles kind of have their known issues. The biggest thing for those Cayennes, the 958 chassis, is that the transfer case can fail over time. And the person who I had got it from had record of the transfer case being replaced earlier last year. So that's when I said, okay, well, that's good. It seems like it's very clean. It seems like it's very well sorted. From a value perspective, the combination of the two cars, I'd say, is pretty comparable to what I was asking for my 911. And we ended up doing the trade. So the buyer ended up, he said, if you do this trade with the Cayenne, I can cover logistics for all three cars. So shipping, two vehicles from Arizona to here, and then the vehicle from here to Arizona, which, was pretty pricey. He also did add some cash on top just to kind of sweeten up the deal, and I agreed to it. So we ended up doing the trade sight unseen, and he shipped the STI and the Cayenne to me, and then the 911 was picked up and shipped to him. So what I will say is, prior to getting the STI, one of my really good friends had told his colleague about the car, who is a huge Subaru fanatic and is very knowledgeable about them. And, I had stopped by my buddy's work and ended up talking to him about the car, and he seemed really excited about it and asked for me to bring it by once I physically get the car. So once the car got delivered and I tagged it, I did take it over there for him to kind of check it out and let him drive it, because, I don't mind sharing my experiences with other enthusiasts. especially somebody like him. He was a lot more knowledgeable about the car than myself, and he was educating me about the car. So after he drove it, he texted me a few hours later and said, hey, I know you just got the car, but you know, I'm actually in the position and currently in the market for like a project, and you know, I'd like to make you an offer on the car even though you just got it. So for me, I like unique things. However, you know, when I got the car, I don't want to say I wasn't in love with it, but I could find something else, right? Like it wasn't hard for me to let it go. If you guys follow the channel, I know in a very short period of time, you've seen a lot of different things. Actually, not a lot of different things. It's a lot of 997s when I go back and look at the channel. But prior to that, I've had a lot of different things. So, you know, I said, yeah, I'll absolutely do that. So if you want, you can just kind of let me know when you're ready. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of wait. So I'm in no rush. Obviously, I just got the car, so take your time. But took him about a week. He was kind of able to get everything together. And that is when I started searching for the next car. So as I started looking for the next car, I was all over the place. I was looking at E36 Tourings because those seem pretty cool, pretty unique. I was looking at E36 M3s just because I've had it before and I love that body style. But then I started looking at the Volvo S60R. Now, for those who aren't familiar with those cars, they're pretty cool for their time, right? Like, I had a couple. My first one was titanium gray with like a tan interior. I had the full Evolve Elevate body kit on it. And then I also had a second one that was in a color called Magic Blue, which is like a dark bluish, purplish color depending on when the sun hit it. And it had what was called a Nordcap interior, which was like a dark blue. Both cars had the M66 6-speed manual transmission. A lot of enthusiasts refer to it as the Spaceball because of the design of the shifter. It's actually got kind of a plate where normally with a manual car you either have a shift boot or it's gated and it's open, you can see it. This has kind of a cover over it that as you move it moves with it. And it's definitely a very unique design that I've never seen before aside from the S60R platform. Now, to me, what I love about the S60R is it's a true enthusiast car. For most people, if you were to see this Volvo, you're just like, it's an old Volvo. I don't understand what's so special about it. But in actuality, the specs are pretty cool. So, you know, the S60R had 300 horsepower and almost 300 foot-pounds of torque from the factory, which is very similar to, like, say, an N54 335i today. They came in 6-speed manual or automatic transmission, factory Brembo brakes. You could get the factory sport kit that makes it look a little bit sportier, but I just like it because it's a very subtle car. Like, if you know what it is, you know. So if you know, you know, right? That is kind of what appealed to me about it. Now, when I had owned my S60Rs in the past, I had joined a Facebook page called like P2R Owners or something like that. And there was a gentleman that had posted a photo of his S60R about 4 years ago. His name was Mike. And I absolutely fell in love with the car, just mainly because of the exterior color. It was Sonic Blue, which, as I mentioned before, it's my favorite color. So he posted it, just kind of sharing photos of the car itself. And I was like, man, I love that. And I sent him a message, and we pretty much stayed in touch for about 4 years. And we would check in with each other periodically. Anytime I was in the market for a car, I would reach out to him and see if, you know, he would consider selling the car. And we either couldn't come to an agreement on price or he wasn't selling. Whatever the case may be, we just couldn't make it work. But after selling the Subaru STI, I was in the market for a car and I started looking at S60Rs and I was thinking about Mike's car. So I reached out to him, we started talking, and I ended up making him an offer that he couldn't refuse. So I ended up picking that up, and that is the car over here. And for the sake of time, what I'll do is I'll just, you know, maybe do separate videos walking around each vehicle. But this is pretty much it. You know, I can obviously just share some kind of photos and stuff that I have for now, but, you know, in another video, I'll do walk around videos and kind of features of each one. But the S60R, just to kind of go over the specs, so it is my dream spec S60R, which is Sonic Blue, and the interior is a Takuma, or it's like an orange color. But I will say it is not an original. They refer to it as a Sonicama, but it's not an original one. The car was originally black with Nordcap or blue interior, but it had been repainted Sonic Blue and the Atacama interior was swapped into it. Now, what appealed to me the most about this car is the previous owner. Just seeing his post and talking to him, you can tell he was an enthusiast and he put his heart and soul into this car. And the thing about these platforms is there's a lot of people that like them, but not many are willing to invest the time and the money into restoring them, just because historically they don't really hold value that well. And I can understand why somebody wouldn't want to dump a ton of money into it unless they absolutely love the platform. And this particular car not only was repainted and, had the interior swapped, but mechanically speaking, the entire car was pretty much sorted through. And Mike kind of gave me a very extensive list of not only the cosmetic changes that he made, but also the maintenance, everything that he went through. Another known issue with these platforms, the S60Rs, is they have what's called the 4C suspension. And over time it can be problematic, but he ended up swapping out the 4C suspension with a set of BC coilovers, and somehow, I don't know if he wired in a resistor or whatever, but there's no lights on the dash because I definitely don't like to have any lights on the dash. From a performance perspective, the car has a snab intake, catless downpipes, tuned front mount intercooler, and I ended up swapping out the exhaust. He had a very good high quality exhaust on this car, arguably probably one of the best for these platforms, which is through TME. The only thing is from the inside, all you could really hear was turbo, not really any exhaust. And I wanted more of that exhaust sound because these engines are 2.5 liter 5-cylinder turbos, so it's a very, very distinctive sound. And I love the way they sound when they're straight pipe. So I ended up selling the TME exhaust and replacing it with pretty much just a straight pipe with a nice clean dual tip exhaust that's kind of like angled off to the side, just to give it kind of like a Euro unique aggressive looking aesthetic, right? So when I got this car, as I mentioned, it was very well sorted, so there really wasn't a ton for me to do. A lot of the times I just do cosmetic mods. When it comes to the mechanics of the car, unless there's something that catches my attention, like say a check engine light, or something dripping on the floor, or the car is not running the way that it's supposed to, unless it's any of those things, I don't really look into it, right? I just kind of drive it and I do cosmetic mods. Is that a good thing? Not really, right? I mean, you should want to make sure that the mechanicals are good, but for me, unless something draws my attention to it, I really don't go looking for it. So cosmetically speaking, this car was very well sorted. And the only things that I did to it was the car has obviously the factory sport kit, and it has 2 winglets up front. And there's a company called Viva Performance that makes a center lip that kind of connects and bridges the 2 winglets together. So I had that color matched. Also, this car had a factory lip wing, which was very subtle, and I think it's clean and it looks good. But because this car has the factory sport kit, it looks a little more aggressive than a factory S60R without the sport kit, and I felt like it looked out of place with the small subtle lip wing. So I went online and I found a company called Spoiler King, and they made this like really clean looking duckbill for the S60R. So I also had that color matched. In the rear of the car when I got it, it was very clean, no emblems in the back. So I wanted to add a little contrast to it, so I ended up putting the S60 badge. I did a very unique R badge, because normally it's just an R, but I found one it's a little bit smaller, but it does have the Swedish flag colors, which is blue and yellow, which is kind of the theme, the color theme on this car with the paint and the brakes. And then also I did the Volvo lettering. Now, the period correct Volvo lettering is the letters very close together, which I do have, but also the more modern Volvo lettering is kind of spread out, and that's what I put on there currently, and I like the way that looks. But I do have the other, just in case I didn't like that one, or if I ever want to switch it up, I kind of have both. But aside from that, the only other thing I added was a phone mount from ProClip USA. Now, I'm a huge fan of ProClip USA. They make vehicle-specific mounts. Normally I would run just like a cheap kind of suction to the windshield or to the dash, something like that, but I don't like the idea of having something, you know, kind of suction to the glass. Sometimes it can fall off if it's cold or if it's really hot, and I also don't like the idea of sticking stuff to the dash. So I like ProClip USA because you can go to their website, you can put in their year, make, model, and then they have vehicle-specific mounts. And not only can you choose the bracket, but you can also choose the mount. For example, I run an iPhone 14 Pro Max, and it has a MagSafe case. And what's nice is I can choose a mount for that, so it's just nice and clean and out of the way. So aside from those things, I haven't really done anything else to this car. The only issue that I had was pretty early on after getting it. I was sitting in the drive-thru and I noticed that the temperature was kind of creeping up, the engine temp. And as I was sitting in a drive-thru, it started getting really, really high. So thankfully I was able to kind of get it out of the drive-thru and I parked it, and coolant started spewing out. And what I realized that the fans never kicked on. And after digging into it with my buddy Rob, we determined that there's like a 60 amp line fuse that had blown, and it's underneath the fuse box. So I ended up reaching out to a Volvo enthusiast. His name was Edwin, and he runs a shop locally. And he said that, you know, I was kind of explaining to him the issue, and he just so happened to want to buy my exhaust that was on the car, since I was, you know, changing it to a straight pipe. So I ended up bringing the exhaust to him, and he actually had a couple spare Volvos in the back. And it was like, yeah, whatever you need, you can just take it. So he had several other kind of similar generation Volvos sitting back there. I think there was a XC SUV and maybe another S60 back there, but they had those very distinctive 60 amp fuses because we couldn't find them at any auto parts store in that size. I think they had like 100 amps, 120 amps, but not 60. And it's something that was, you know, I kind of wanted to address immediately. I could have ordered it online for relatively cheap, but he ended up letting us take those fuses. We grabbed several of them, and then actually the fan, there was a potential chance that, you know, something was wrong with that. So we ended up grabbing the fan as well, and after throwing it in, it's been pretty much perfect since. Mechanically, it runs and drives great. There's no lights on the dash, it doesn't leak anything. Truly an amazing car. I'm so happy with it. You know, the only thing I can say about it now is there's nothing really left for me to change anymore. So in that sense, it's kind of gotten a little stale for me. So aside from that, very, very happy with the car. Like I said, it's a very uncommon spec, and it's actually very uncommon to find them in good condition, you know, like this one. So I had the Volvo for a while and I was enjoying it. And what's funny is I was kind of searching around for a daily driver one day, and as I was looking, I came across this car, and it was a 2010 W204 chassis C63 AMG. And I really, really like those cars. For those who aren't familiar with them, it's, you know, the C-Class is pretty much like the compact model when it comes to sedans of Mercedes, and then you have the E-Class, which is a mid-size. S-Class is kind of like a larger sedan. But the C-Class is a little more compact, kind of comparable to, say, an E90 M3 or something like that. And I've always liked the cars. Factory, they come with a naturally aspirated 6.2 liter V8 that produces around 450 horsepower. However, the known issues with those cars, or the M156 platform, is that the head studs are known to break. So with that, you know, it was always kind of challenging trying to find one that's been very well sorted. So once I came across the C63, I thought to myself, this is definitely a nice car, but I'm not in the market for a car, right? I currently have 4 vehicles. I have my daily, we have our SUV, and I have these 2 vehicles, the S60R and this Cayenne. Now, about a week later, my really good friend Wes sent it to me, and I said, you know, I saw the car, I think it's really nice. I'm just not really in the market for a car, and I really don't like to look for things unless I intend to make a move on it. So we kind of just left it as is. Now, my buddy Wes was on a trip out of the country with his wife, and he ended up sending me the ad again, and I was like, all right, either he has bad memory like I do, or he really likes this car. So the second time around when he sent it to me, I really started looking at it, and I was like, man, I really do like that car, and I will tell you why. So not only is the C63 a really cool platform, but what made this one really unique is that it had a fully built motor, and it had a supercharger installed. So as if the car wasn't crazy enough, I mean, it was making pretty substantial power, and if you've seen my videos, you know that power really isn't a priority for me. If it has it, that's cool, but I'm not one to really, make things substantially faster from what it is. I'm definitely not going to go out of my way and take something that was naturally aspirated and boost it. So after looking at it, I said, I really do like that car, but I can't afford it now, and if I do want it, I'm gonna have to get rid of something. And the only thing comparable in value was the Porsche Cayenne Turbo S. So I started writing up the ad for the Cayenne, and as I finished writing up the ad, I said, you know what? I'll reach out to him and ask if he'd be interested in a trade, because the absolute worst case scenario is he says no, and then I know that I just have to sell the Cayenne if I want to try to buy this car. So on a Thursday, I ended up reaching out to him and saying pretty much, hey, would you be interested in a trade for your C63? And normally if people aren't, they'll usually say right away, hey, no thanks, just want to sell it, whatever it is, cool, no problem. But he said, what do you have? And I said, I have a 16 Porsche Cayenne Turbo S. And he started telling me that him and his girlfriend were actually, starting to potentially talk about having kids, so he was kind of looking for something a little more family friendly, but still had a performance aspect to it, which, I mean, the Cayenne Turbo S is probably the best, suit that fits that bill, because it's, I don't know if I just probably made up that saying, but I couldn't think of a better platform, right? A family-friendly performance SUV, Cayenne Turbo S, right? It's a Porsche twin-turbo V8, 550 horsepower from the factory, or maybe even more. I don't really even remember, but I know that they make a lot of power, and especially with the modifications that this one has, it's probably a little more. And I did do some things to it while I had the Cayenne. I put some wheel spacers on it. Those cars have air suspension, so to lower them is super easy. You just get these adjustable ride height sensors, and in this situation, the shorter that you made it, the lower the car would go. In our Range Rover, it's very strange, like the fronts, the shorter you make them, the lower it goes, but in the rear, the longer you make them, the shorter it goes. So it's definitely unique. I don't quite understand, why some are, shorter to go lower, and why some are longer to go lower, but if you guys know, feel free to put it in the comment page. I'm kind of interested to know why that is, but anyway, I lowered the vehicle, put some spacers on it, had it tinted, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it was a very good-looking SUV. It was fast, but again, we don't need two SUVs. So when I started kind of telling him about it, he said, yeah, he was interested. So the next day, it was a Friday, we ended up jumping on the phone and kind of FaceTiming with each other. And what we did was kind of walk through the car, pointed out imperfections, addressed any kind of questions or inquiries that we had of each vehicle, and then we mutually decided to make this happen. So we had agreed to meet up a week later, but what ended up happening was we were free one day, and we were both kind of off earlier, so what we ended up doing is we ended up meeting up halfway. Anytime I've done trades in the past, I think the best way for both parties is to meet halfway. This way, one person is not doing all the driving, right? Say you drive all the way out somewhere to go look at something, you're the one that has the most to lose, versus if you meet halfway, you're both equally vested. It also shows that the car can mechanically make it, whatever that distance is. So for us, where he was located in Connecticut, halfway for us was somewhere in New Jersey. I believe it was like the Mount Laurel area. So I found a Target, sent him the address, and for me it was only about an hour and a half drive. For him it was a little bit longer, just because he had to go through New York. But long story short, we ended up meeting halfway, and the car was exactly how he described it. And again, what I'll do is for each vehicle, I will kind of do maybe a feature on each one and kind of talk about everything, go over the outside of it, driving it, and my opinion on it. But to give you the details of the second car, I ended up straight up trading my Cayenne for a 2010 Mercedes-Benz C63 AMG. The guy that I got it from had owned it for 9 years, and he put a lot of time, money, and effort into it. Very well documented, as I mentioned. Fully built motor. It had, Carrillo rods, CP pistons, ported head, upgraded injectors, methanol, and the car put down 670 rear-wheel horsepower on MS 105 fuel. I believe on pump gas it makes around 600 wheel, which is plenty for me. And not only that, it's super clean. The car is black, it has white interior, it's on lowering springs, has a nice set of, I believe, iForged wheels, and I think they look good. The rears are a little more concave than the front. It had a carbon fiber front lip, carbon fiber side skirt extensions, carbon fiber rear diffuser, carbon fiber lip wing. It also had like a newer C63 rear bumper and taillights, just because he thought it looked a little more aggressive, a little more modern. I believe the earlier model C63s just had taillights, with regular bulbs in them, versus the facelift had like LED taillights, and they just looked slightly more aggressive. But aside from that, cosmetically, I thought it looked really good. And usually when I look for things, the less I have to put into it or change, the better. And the beauty is I pretty much love the way that everything looked on this car, minus a few things. So what I have done so far is, so when I first got the car, it had like these carbon fiber eyelids, and underneath there is like a parking light. I do like carbon. I did not like the look of the carbon eyelids, so I ended up removing it, and I got them in gloss black. Also, when I got the car, the front grille was plasti dipped, which I wasn't a huge fan of, just like the matte finish, so I ended up replacing that with a gloss black grille, and then also the star in the middle, I got an updated gloss black one. Also, the front parking lights were kind of like this smoke clear color, and I ended up getting some black housing smoke ones, but it still had white LEDs, so it'll still show through when you turn them on at night. Also swapped the fog lights to white LED. Also to the car, to kind of flow with the existing mods that he did, I did carbon fiber side skirt extensions. So from a side profile, the front lip and the side skirt extensions would match. I also did in the rear, actually I don't think I've done anything in the rear yet, sorry. I did order rear side splitters, so this way when you're looking at the car from a complete side profile, the front lip side skirt extensions and then these rear side splitters would all kind of tie together. And I got them in carbon fiber, but they still have not arrived. I kind of ordered them during like Chinese New Year, and they were coming from overseas. So it still hasn't shipped, but hopefully it'll ship out sometime next week. Honestly, the weather here hasn't been the best, so it's not like I'm really driving the car a ton anyway. So I haven't really been in like a huge rush. I just more or less like to have everything together, so when the weather is nice, you can take it out and know that it's pretty much complete. But once those carbon rear side splitters come and I put them on, I think I'd probably like to tint the windows, maybe a couple changes here or there. Another thing that I did on the inside was I ordered another ProClip USA phone mount. He had something on the air vent, but while it is kind of out of the way and it's not anything suction, I don't like when it starts to affect functionality. So that one vent that the phone's sitting in front of, one, you're blowing sometimes hot air on the back of the phone, which can make it hot, and I just don't like it affecting the functionality of your kind of HVAC system in the car. So I ended up getting a custom one that is kind of off to the side, and the mount is for MagSafe, my phone. Also on the inside of the car, he had started to put some of the carbon vinyl wrap on the center console and the climate control, and otherwise there's like factory like wood in there. And I'm not a huge fan of carbon fiber vinyl. I think today there's probably a ton of more advanced tech, I guess, when it comes to wraps, to where it's actually like, it looks like actual carbon. So I ended up removing the carbon fiber vinyl from the OEM wood, and thankfully it was nice and clean underneath. I lied. The thing that I did do in the back is on the rear trunk, there is a trim piece that kind of goes across, and that was wrapped also in that relatively inexpensive carbon vinyl. So I had that removed, had it wrapped in gloss black. Also, the door handles on the car had that carbon vinyl wrap. I removed it, and it was kind of chrome underneath, and I ended up finding this company that makes these gloss black covers that pretty much go over it, and it's a relatively inexpensive way to kind of black out the chrome, and it also makes it so it is reversible. Say somebody buys this car down the line and they want chrome, they can just take it off. You know, it's not like it's been repainted completely. So that is pretty much it for the car. I mean, I've done like little things here and there, like on the back seats there are these like side cushions, and they are secured by these plastic clips, and one of the clips was missing a tab, so it just kept popping out. And since the windows aren't tinted now, if you were to look in the back seat, you know, the cushion will kind of pop out and you could just see the foam on the side. It didn't look right, so pretty easy fix. I jumped on Amazon. It must be a known issue because there's an aftermarket solution for it, and there are these relatively inexpensive clips that I popped the new one on, and now it's nice and secure as it should be. But that is pretty much where we're at. I know the last time I put out a video with the C4S was a couple months ago, so a lot has changed in a very short period of time. But at this time, I currently have 2 projects, which is kind of cool because historically speaking, I've only been able to kind of afford like 1 project at a time. So now I kind of have 2. S60R is not really a project though, because it's pretty much complete. I mean, there are some small things I want to do, like bring out the rear wheels a little bit further. But aside from that, I mean, it's pretty much done. And the nice thing about having the S60R being done is I consider the C63 a project still, and the reason why is because there are still things that, you know, I have planned to do stuff. So if there's a car event going on and I want to go out, I can just take the Volvo, and even though it's not obviously the nicest car in the world, I really love these cars, especially because finding one that has been sorted through has definitely become, you know, few and far between, just because by the time these cars start having all those problems, people just dump them, they move on to something else, which I totally get. So this is kind of one of the fewest P2Rs on the market today that is this clean. Now, because there's nothing left to change, I did kind of just put it out on the market, but my intention is to kind of keep it and enjoy it until the right offer comes along, or maybe somebody offers me something unique that I've never had before. But I absolutely love both cars. It's just the C63 is kind of where my focus is because there's not a ton to change on the R. But that is pretty much where we're at, guys, and I just wanted to give you an update. I do apologize for taking so long for putting out a video, but just a lot has been going on. As you can tell, it's been very busy. But the next video, I'm likely going to do a feature on each car. I'll do a video for each one just to kind of, you know, separate it and give each one the attention that it deserves, and kind of share with you, you know, do a walk around and, you know, driving in it, my opinions of it, and, you know, things like that. But that pretty much wraps up today's video. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and until the next video, I'll catch you next time. Peace.